Good morning, YouTube. All right, we're gonna attempt live, even though my data may be kept. Tried to do a live stream yesterday, and it was terrible. But we're gonna try it again today, just to talk a little bit about off-grid living and what I think is kind of a lie. But I think a lot of it has to do with the definition that you have for off-grid. I was looking a lot at the RV forums, which is bursting with a lot of new people getting into RV life. And they were talking about off-grid and how confusing it was. And it's confusing because there's a lot of definitions different people are using for off-grid living. And then the other issue you run into is people say they want to be off-grid, but then they want air conditioning and a washer dryer and all the modern conveniences that pretty much require you to be on-grid unless you have a lot of money. So with that said, let's talk a little bit about off-grid living, because that's a topic that is really of interest to me personally. And it doesn't really have to do with wanting to be off-grid to be hip or anything like that, or saving the environment and all those noble things that people talk about when they say they want to be off-grid. But I'm going to define my definition of off-grid, and it's a very simple definition, and it basically is what it says. You're off-grid. I'm going to show you a view here out the front, if I can switch the camera view. I don't know if you can see all those power, we call them telephone poles, but they're not really telephone poles anymore. Those are power lines on the right side of the road there. These are power lines that carry electricity to all these stores and houses here in the city. Okay, there's a huge electric company. Matter of fact, I think this is one of them right here. The towers on the left right here, coming up, you're going to see some giant towers. I don't know if you can see it on the video or not yet, but there's big, huge towers that generate electricity at the power plant. And we're getting this stopped so we can talk about it a little bit. It is right here on the left of the video. Let me try to find it. It's over here, back here in the back. But those are power plants in Port St. John. Okay, and you can see the steam coming up because they're cool. I guess they're cooling stuff down. I'm not sure what they're using to make the electricity. I don't think it's nuclear. I doubt it's nuclear. Nuclear usually has those things that look like a volcano. So maybe somebody who knows what they do in Port St. John for the power, but that's a huge power plant. And then they have places that relay it and send it out. So if you're gridded, what it means is, see these power lines? You're getting power that's being generated by somebody somewhere, and they're sending it across the line to your house. I'm in an RV, park, and I'm gridded. Even though it's kind of like a campground, it can be primitive, it looks primitive, and everybody's kind of living somewhat semi-primitive. But we're gridded because we get power from these power lines. And we also get water, from the city. So the city has a water processing, and, they try to sterilize the water, and they take care of us, basically. So we use the services of the city for water and electric. And whether you are living in a tent, a car, an RV, or whatever, if you're plugged into the city water, if you're plugged into an electrical outlet at your friend's house or whatever, or an RV park, you're on the grid. That's my definition, okay? Now, what's interesting is this. Some people think that if you're on the grid, it's bad. Whoa, cop just got somebody got hit or something. There was a guy on a bike might have been drunk or something, or I don't know, cops, I don't know if they're hassling him, or I don't know. I'm just gonna stay out of that one. But basically, a lot of people think that if you're off grid, you have to basically not be connected, which is the first definition. You're not connected. And that essentially is the definition I go by. But what's interesting about being off-grid is this, okay, and even for me, myself, I don't really like the term off-grid to cover everything, because this is, to truly live off-grid means you really shouldn't need, if you're truly off-grid, you shouldn't need to make your own grid. And what I mean by that is this. I don't know if you know, I spent like about $1,000 or more setting up the solar power system for the RV good enough. What I did was I got like over 1,000 watts of solar panels, some wiring, some switches, power inverters to convert 12 volts to 120 volts, and 500 amp hours of battery. Okay, that actually gives me the ability to generate enough electricity for me to reasonably use in the RV while off the grid or off grid. What it means is I can park the RV in a field somewhere with no electricity, and I generate enough electricity to charge my battery up each day that I can run, you know, most of the small stuff. I can run like TV, lights. I can run the microwave to cook a couple meals as long as the sun's out. And if I really wanted to, I can run the air conditioning, the window. I can run the overhead roof AC, but not very long. I can run the smaller window unit, which uses about 1/3 to 1/2 the power of an overhead AC unit. But at the most, on a sunny day, I can probably run it about 3 hours straight. You know, then my battery's drained, because my solar power system isn't fast enough, isn't generating enough power to charge my battery bank. My battery bank's not large enough to handle the capacity of running the air conditioning the whole day nonstop. Okay. Now, when I'm generating electricity, I essentially am my own grid. So I'm not off grid, really. I'm just a single cell of a grid, but I'm generating it myself. So I think a better term for all of this isn't so much using off-grid to describe the whole movement, but using off-grid to mean you're disconnected from the, you know, the city water and power plant. So it's more self-sufficiency, you know, than it is being off-grid. Because I don't like being off-grid, honestly. I like having air conditioning. I like being able to take a shower and have the water run on me and be hot or warm water. I like running a dishwasher. I like running a washer dryer. All those things I like to do, and I'd like to be to do them while off-grid. But for me, if you make electricity, you made your own grid. You know, so you're just off the city's grid, but you got your own grid. You make a large enough system, you can hook up multiple people to your off-grid system. You've got your own grid. So I think that's one of the lies, is that people believe that, especially people who have money, and they buy all, you know, like literally like 2,000 amp hours of battery, 2,000 to 5,000 amp hours of battery packs, and 2,000 to 5,000 watts of solar panels. That's like a lot of money. Okay, they made themselves a power plant. And then they say, I'm off grid. No, you're not connected to the grid. You're not off grid. You made your own grid. Okay? Because some people say, well, that's different than the city's grid. No, it's not. The city here, they provide the power for a limited area, for whatever service area they're servicing. So, like, this grid here isn't servicing China. It's not servicing Texas. It's not servicing whatever. It's only servicing this area, okay? So this is just a huge off-grid system with a bunch of people connected to the grid, if you know what I'm saying. When you have all that money, and even me on my smaller scale that spent, you know, I spent like $1,000 on my system, a little bit more than $1,000. I'm making my own grid as far as power grid. Then we got the whole issue of water. Okay, like, how do you sanitize water? How do you capture water and stuff? It's a lot easier if you have a house, on land somewhere, or a hut, or a yurt, or something, because then you can catch the water and sterilize it and do all that. But you essentially have created your own grid, your own cell of a grid. Okay, so you're not truly off grid, you just made your own. Now, if you're truly off grid, you don't really need any of this stuff that the modern conveniences use, on the grid. So I think the better term for me, I'm not so much an off-gridder as trying to be self-sufficient. Now, when you simplify the term like that, it makes things a little bit easier, because even though, I'll use the term off-grid on my channel when I, show that the RV is running power, generating its own electricity and stuff, like Little Blue is off-grid capable in the sense that it doesn't need to be connected to generate electricity for me to cook food. But Little Blue is making its own grid, a mini grid. So, using the term off-grid in that case is kind of, what do they call it, like a misnomer? It's not really true. If I was truly off-grid, I'd be cooking with fire. Okay? I'd be cooking with fire, although I could cook with solar in the sense of using solar energy itself, the heat, the radiant energy from solar. But when I convert it to electricity, I've made a mini grid. At least that's how I view it. But really, none of that is important except for the reasoning on why you want to go off-grid, if you want to call it off-grid. But like I say, for me, it's not so much off-grid as being self-sufficient. If you say you want to go off-grid, then that implies you want to totally disconnect from society's telephone poles here with all the, we call them telephone poles, but they're electrical poles, with all the wires and stuff carrying all the voltages that allow you to run your microwave at a flip of a button, or press of a button, and turn your lights on by flipping a switch. You really enjoy all that, but you want to be able to do it yourself. You're still wanting to be gridded, okay? You just don't want to pay for the electricity through the city. Instead, in most cases, you paid up front with your own money, and you created your own crappy grid system. I say crappy because there's no way you're going to generate as much electricity as they do, the cities in them do when they do it in mass. Now, the problem you have when you create a crappy, I'm going to say, let's say you have a $20,000 solar power system that you installed on your big rig, which miraculously has enough room to put all the solar panels and can run with the big, huge battery bank of batteries you need, okay? Which I still find it very hard that someone could do that unless they have a giant ass rig and huge battery banks. I saw like a vehicle that was like a double-decker bus. I mean, not double-decker, a double-unit bus. It was like a Caterpillar type bus, huge. And they had their own power systems and could run stuff off electric. But even then, I think it was only limited time. And it was a huge system. I think they had like more than 2,000 watts of power and more than 2,000 amp hours of solar storage, amp hour storage. But they had more than 2,000 watts that they were generating. And they could only run partially, okay? Because running things like air conditioning, refrigeration, microwaves, washing machines, those are all high draw power devices. And if you want to be off-grid and you want to have access to those things, you're going to need to make a miniature grid that's huge. Okay, and so you're not really off-grid, you're making your own grid. And like I said, it's expensive. So what I'm getting at is this. If you start straightening out your mind and understanding what it is that you really want, okay, it makes it easier to do it affordably, okay? If you want to have power to run AC and stuff all day long, all night long, especially night, okay, it's virtually impossible unless you have a lot of money and have created similar to a city. You have huge storage of electrical, and you have huge way of generating electricity. A small way to do it to generate enough electricity, believe it or not, is a generator. One of the older technologies, which is a generator, can generate enough electricity to power your air conditioner all night, or most of the night, okay? But then you have to keep adding fuel. And I don't know if it's cheaper to do that than to use electricity generated by the city. Honestly, I think it's more expensive because the city produces in mass. Now, if you want it to be energy independent, that means you make your own electricity. Remember, we're not saying off-grid now. You can do that by using wind, solar power. You can use even hydroelectric. Okay? So you're living off the grid. You're not connected to the grid, but you're not truly off-grid because you're generating your own grid. You've made your own power source. Why this is important is this. I'm trying to show people how to save money. Okay? And this is what I'm going to recommend, even though it can cause some problems because cities are a-holes. The regulations and stuff by cities. Okay? They want you to pay for all their services. The reason they want you to pay for all their services is that's how they make money. That's how cities make revenue. So they tax you they charge you for the service of using their electricity that they generated, the power plant. They charge you for using water that goes through their water treatment. They charge you even for trash pickup. And that's how they make money in addition to sales tax and everything else, and property tax. And you're like, what is Dinoy talking about? He's just mumbling about crap that doesn't seem to really make any sense. I'm trying to show you that you can be on the grid, living, for those of you who dream of living off-grid, if you want to call it off-grid, I'm trying to show you can do it on the grid in a way that you're kind of living off-grid, semi-off-grid. And it might save you money. What it means is this: if you have a house or even a condo or something, condos might be a little bit harder because they'll have, or a housing where they have the, what do they call those people? The Gestapo that go around the neighborhood. What do they call those people? Your house has got to be a certain color. It's got to be the grass has got to be cut at a certain day. Trash has to be out by a certain day. You can only paint your house a certain color. I don't know why people choose to live like that in those places. They have, what do they call those people? I forget. But they suck. And then they charge you money on top of that. But anyhow, let's say you have a normal house in a normal neighborhood, you could do, a home owners association or whatever it is. Home, whatever. They suck. I would never choose. People choose that because they say, well, it guarantees a certain style of how. I'm like, you're paying somebody to rule over you on stupid shit. Like, you can't even paint your house the color you like. Can't even put up Christmas decorations or whatever their rules are, and it's weird. It varies. Homeowners, whatever, association, whatever they call them. But the thing about it is, if you're on grid, there's no reason you have to take all your power from their grid. You're like, what are you talking about, Dinoy? I'm going to give you a scenario that I was going to do with my house, even though I was on the grid. And some people do it already, but they still comply with the city and the grid. The rich people will get solar panels, and they'll cover up the roof of their house with the solar panels, commercial solar panels, like huge. And they'll generate electricity, but instead of storing it for their own use, they feed it back into the grid for the electric company, and the electric company gives them credit for electrical usage. And then, that way, when they use power, they can pull it off the electric company or directly off their panels, okay? But any excess that they make goes into the city, for storage, the city's electrical plant. And that's kind of a decent way to do it. But the problem with that is, usually if you're wanting to build a system like that to be on grid while you're off grid with the city, you're probably looking at $10,000, $20,000 or more, because you're going to need that many solar panels, and it has to be done a certain way, their way. The other problem you have is this: you're not really self-sufficient. You spend $10,000, $20,000 to put solar panels up to become part of the grid for the electric company. And you're like, well, I'm getting free electricity and they're paying me. And I'm thinking, how long would it take you to go through $10,000 or $20,000 worth of electric? And that's going to vary by person. You know, some people who can serve use $60 worth of electricity. You know, it depends on the price and stuff. But some people can get by on $60. Some people require $300 or $400. Some might even require even more per month. So how much electricity you require depends a lot on you. So that's one way to do it if you have the money. But if you're watching this channel, you probably don't have that kind of money. So I'm going to try to teach you a way of doing it that's kind of sneaky. Okay? If you've been following this channel, then you know that the minimum you require really, okay, to do anything useful, like cook food, run a TV set, run fans, okay? The minimal system is roughly 250 watts, okay? Maybe even 200 watts of solar panels and 200 amp hours of battery. And you're like, what's he getting at? That's one 200 to 300 watt solar panel and 2 RV batteries and a 750 watt or 1000 watt power inverter. That's all you need if you keep things within reason. And then this is what the cost will be. The solar panel should cost you roughly, if you get it used, you could probably pick it up for under $100. And some people say, well, used it won't have that much power output. I've had no issues with I put a broken panel on my roof, and it's been generating more than enough electricity to run Little Blue, run the TV, run video games, cook food, do everything I need, and run 3 fans all night, you know, because it totally recharges the system each day. 200 amp hours is enough to do that. Notice I'm not trying to run an air conditioner or a microwave. When I do a microwave, you're going to need more power. So what I would recommend, if you wanted to start on solar and actually save some money, one of the biggest uses that people have in a house for electric is lighting. Okay? And lighting can be done with solar easily, especially if you use LED, which to me is still kind of too expensive. So I would use fluorescent. I would not use incandescent, which is the regular old. I don't think you can buy an incandescent bulb anymore, but I think you can still buy fluorescent. But fluorescent light bulbs tend to be like about 4 or 5 times more efficient than incandescent, whereas LEDs could be like 100 or 1,000 times more efficient. Okay, so LEDs are the best way to go if you want to really, really conserve electricity. They barely use anything. But they're expensive. And remember, you know, this channel is about, let's do things cheap. It just needs to be good enough. So I actually don't recommend LEDs right now in the sense that for the price value, unless you have the money and you really want to stretch your batteries out. But I would go with fluorescent light bulbs, you know, fluorescent light tubes and stuff like that. They make light bulbs that look like incandescent light bulbs that screw into a regular light socket, but they're fluorescent. And actually, the newer ones have warm colors, so you're not that green-blue haze, you know, that green-blue look tint of a fluorescent bulb. So you look a little bit more normal. The cost on those bulbs are much, much cheaper than LEDs. So I would go with those, unless you find a good source of cheap LEDs. So having a system with, let's go with 300 watt, 250 to 300 watt solar panel. We're going to say you get that for, let's say you get it brand new, you probably can pick it up for about $150. Okay? Then you need 2 batteries, and if you go cheap, you know, get the regular RV deep cycle batteries. They're about $100 each. It's a little bit less than that, but let's say $100 each. So that's $200 more. So let's say you pay $200 for your solar panel, $200 for the batteries. That's $400. Then you need a inverter, and if you go, you're thinking small. You're not gonna do anything huge on it. You're just gonna run basic stuff like 70% of your household needs. Okay. Then you're looking at a 750 watt inverter, not even a really expensive one. You can get that for about $30 or $40. We're gonna round it up to $50. So you have $450. Then you need wiring, okay? And if you go with the 10 gauge wire from, like Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever, and if you order a lot of this stuff online, you can get it even cheaper, okay? Other than batteries, because batteries weigh a lot and they'll charge you on shipping. But if you get this stuff online, it's really cheap. So you get the whole system for about $500. You're like, $500 is all it takes? That for a very small system that could run a cabin, out in the woods, or see, a cabin in the woods is not as good as a house in the city. You're like, what are you talking about? I'm talking about if you built a house, if you built a cabin out in the middle of nowhere, that little system I just described would be enough for you to provide lighting and cook rice in the daytime if it's sunny. If you're in Florida, a place like Florida or somewhere sunny. And you can run fans all day and all night. You can run like 3 fans or more. The little 12 volt fans, mind you. So that little system would run basically everything you see me running inside Little Blue. TVs, video games and stuff, all, you can run it. You can't run it all night because the power will start to drain out. And there's no way of charging it if you're going off solar, okay? Other than a generator. So you might want a generator as a backup. But here's the magic of it all. If you live in a city, that system is ideal because for $500, the equivalent of anywhere from 1 month to 5 months rent, depending on how much electricity you use, you can generate electricity for free pretty much. Not free, it's $500. But you could use it for years and years and years and years. So what you do is if you have a house or whatever, you mount that on the roof or on the garage. If you're in a little apartment in a building, like a high-rise apartment, as long as they don't have ordinances against this, they don't have rules, you could mount it on your patio or something. And then you take your battery and you leave it out there, but you mount a little area, because you want that stuff vented. Batteries, the cheap batteries, the lead acid, they release gases that are poisonous when they're charging. So you want it outside of the house itself. You want it kind of vented. So you mount all that on your porch, on your back porch, on your balcony or whatever, and you run a little line into your house. Okay, you might even want to put the inverter out there away, or you could bring the line in. But the problem is 12 volts. If you're trying to pull it through, you kind of need a really thick gauge line, like a 0 gauge. And you don't want it too long, too far away from the battery when you hook it up to the inverter. What I would recommend is generating 120 volts at the battery. You have your solar panel, which you put up either in your backyard, on your roof, or whatever. Roof is ideal, then it's out of the way, okay? But if you don't have a roof, like you live in an apartment or something, you might be able to put it on the patio. And you're like, well, you don't get the full sun all day. No, you won't, but at least it just needs to be good enough. Remember, you're not going for all expensive. You're not even going for the most efficient. You're going for good enough for your use. So you can generate electricity and store it, in the 200-hour battery bank, which really is only going to give you 100 amp hours. But that's more than enough to do the stuff you're going to need to do, like run a rice cooker to cook food. Also, the big thing you can use it for, okay, is watching TV, running the internet. You could, like, if you do internet like me, you have a cell phone that you pay, for data access, unlimited data, and you set that as a Wi-Fi hotspot. So you can power your TV all day to watch movies and stuff and play video games. Meanwhile, all you're doing is running like an extension cord from the inverter room, where the power room, if you want to call it that, into your house. And then from that extension cord, you can plug in your TV sets and lights and stuff like that you're going to use. You don't have to rewire your whole house. We're not talking about making any change to the house at all. So you could do this in an apartment or a condo, okay, anywhere. And you have your own little private little off-grid little grid that you made for yourself for $500. And you're like, well, what does that do really? Well, it'll save on your lighting bill, so you don't have to pay for electricity to run the. It might save some more on your cooking, okay? And you can still run your air conditioning on grid. So you use the AC to run, the AC is still connected to the gridded system, and your refrigerator is still connected. So, and you still have your washer dryer. So you have the modern conveniences, but you've reduced your usage of gridded electrical power. So you could save money over the long run. And you didn't spend $20,000 to $50,000 installing a solar power system to feed the stuff back to the city. And you're like, well, the savings isn't huge. It can be, because if you don't run air conditioning all the time and you run fans, you just saved a lot of money. Now you might like your refrigerator and your stove. You can run those off electric, off the city. It just costs money, but you're offsetting some of it by generating your own power. And the real use for something like this is when the power grid goes down. I don't know if you saw how many people were out of power where Hurricane Laura hit. And those people have no electricity, and a lot of those people killed themselves by running a generator. They didn't run it appropriately. Like, they put the generator where the fumes leaked into their house, and then they all died. They said more people got killed by their generator running it incorrectly than the storm itself, okay? Because they wanted electricity, and you know what they probably wanted the electricity for? They probably wanted the electricity for lights. Most people like lights at night, especially if you have little kids. They get scared of the dark. That was a big push for me to get into being self-sufficient and off-grid and being able to do all this stuff myself. My daughter used to be extremely scared of the dark. And living in Florida, power always went off during hurricane season. And sometimes really bad storms, it could be off for a week or two. Okay? I was able to generate electricity and light up my house and watch DVDs with my family. And anyone walking down the street outside my house thought we had electricity, because we did. They were like thinking we were aliens or something, because the whole neighborhood was pitch black, and my house had several rooms lit up and a TV set running with a movie, okay, and a fan blowing on everybody. So you won't be able to run everything, and you're going to lose some of your conveniences. And I'll talk to you about conserving electricity and stretching the gridded power so you don't use so much. Because, see, you can learn a lot from off-gridders. The more efficient your system is while you're on the grid, the less electricity you're going to use. So the more you can learn to do with less, like not running the air conditioning at 58 degrees or 68 degrees, learning to keep the AC at maybe 72 to 74 degrees if you can deal with that, and then when you leave the house, either shut it off completely, which is kind of bad because it could become more cost prohibitive when you try to turn it back on. I used to turn my AC up to 78 to 80. Okay, when I left the house, I would always set it to go back up to about 78 or 80 degrees, maybe even 82 degrees. And then when I came into the house, I set it down to like 76. So the reason I did that was I was willing to keep the AC running at the warmer temperature, but it was cheaper than trying to keep it at, 72 degrees or whatever while I'm gone out of the house. So when I'm in the house, it was set at 74, 76. But when I wasn't in the house, I'd raise it up to 78. That would save a lot of money on electric. It could be a couple $100. But basically, if you have a semi off-grid and you have your own ability to generate electricity and you use that to run the lights, you don't have to run all the rooms. Just like the main room, like the living room, maybe the kitchen, places where people stay all the time and want light. And if you have enough power to run your TV, heck yeah. TVs nowadays are super efficient if you have a LED TV or an LCD. And most TVs nowadays are LED. They're super, super efficient. So you can run a LED TV, your video game system, if you play video games, your even your computer, you know. Get a computer, specifically if you can get a laptop. They generally use less power than a desktop machine, and they have a built-in display, so you don't have to run a second device. So you can run a laptop computer, and if you decide, well, I want more power, you know, I'm going through too fast, all you have to do is add another battery and keep adding batteries, you know, as you need. As long as the solar is enough to generate to charge the system up. The time you really need to conserve, what you have to do when you have your own solar power generator system, is do what's called load balancing. You gotta look at like when you make a lot of electricity. You make a lot of electricity when the sun's out, like right now. So when the sun's out, electricity is like plentiful. You can run your fans, you can run your lights, you can run your TV, okay? And you're not gonna have problems because the electric from the sun on a 300 watt panel will generate more than enough to charge it up and run all those appliances. And if you do the rice cooker, it won't be enough to run the rice cooker. That's when you draw from the battery bank. But the rice cooker doesn't run continuously. You know, it finishes cooking in 15 minutes, the little one. So 15 minutes and then the battery starts to charge back up. That's load management. So you don't want to keep running the rice cooker all day long. That'll kill your battery. But you're not going to be cooking on a rice cooker 24/7. You're only cooking for 15 minutes. With 2 batteries, you could possibly run a microwave for 1 meal. Then let the system charge back up. But microwave uses a lot more electricity. You know, most microwaves a small microwave will use 800 watts, but they peak at 1600. You know, so it probably, if you're going to run a microwave, you're probably going to need a 1,000 watt or a 2,000 watt unit, which to me it becomes not worth it. You know. Now some of you are like, well, you could cook if you were totally off grid. Even though you're living at the house, you could cook using propane. You could do that. You could live like you're living off grid. The problem with propane is it costs money, and that's why you see me trying not to use butane or propane to cook, because that allows you to be off grid. But I don't know people who can generate their own propane or make their own butane. So when you have to go to the store to buy the propane or the butane, you're going back to the gridded system. You're going back to, you know, buying things that you consume. Same with batteries, but batteries last longer than a propane tank or a butane tank. So, you know, you're not going to be completely self-sufficient unless you don't use electricity. You know, you live like the old people who had no electricity. But if you're buying candles and stuff, then you're still back on the grid. You'd have to make your own candles. So, you know, once you get over that it's not so much a term, but how you want to live and how self-sufficient you want to be, you don't have to be 100%. You could be partial. And you could live running air conditioning all night, all day by living on the grid, but by generating your own electricity for off-grid, you can save money. And when the power grid goes down, you know, when their big grid, the generator of electricity, shuts down, you won't be able to run air conditioning and all the devices that have a large draw on power, but You will have lights while the rest of your neighborhood are dark. You will have a fan blowing on you while they're all sitting in the dark. You could cook with a rice cooker and have rice made with like normal while they're all having to use a butane or a propane or a generator, which can kill them, a gas generator. So having all that set up and you're using it even without an emergency, you learn to use it in load balance before the electric company shuts down, when things go out, you are ahead of everybody. So if you're living in Florida or North Carolina, anywhere along the coast where electricity goes out because of hurricanes, but even in places like Oklahoma and stuff, as long as the tornado doesn't hit you, you're okay. But sometimes it can hit the power plant or whatever, and you can be offline. Having all this stuff set up means that you can survive. Now, here's a really big tip in case you haven't figured it out. Some of you are like, hey, don't you already have that system inside Little Blue, Denoy? Don't you have a 255 watt solar panel and 200 plus amp hours of batteries and an inverter already configured in your car, in your van? Now some of you are getting ideas, right? Yeah, I already have that done in my van. I even have a bedroom and a kitchen. So if I needed to escape or just head out, wanted to go camping, I don't have to do anything. I can head out. But let's say there's a hurricane in Florida and I'm living somewhere, like in a house or something, and the grid goes offline. All I have to do is take an extension cord, hook it up to the power system that is inside my van, and my house has power. That is, to me, one of the biggest reasons for getting your vehicle rigged. It's a giant portable power generation plant and battery. Think about it. So you could live in that. Of course, you'd have to sleep standing up. Put a little chair in there, a little recliner, and you could sleep in there. But anyhow, just trying to throw some food out for thought. Those of you who live in a house, okay, let's say the city has rules about not having solar panels or whatever like that. You might be able to put it on the roof of your car or van and set up the generator in there as well as the battery. Although, it gets kind of hard driving with the batteries because they're heavy. It decreases your gas miles, your miles per gallon, because the batteries are really heavy. But basically, you could make a van or a car like Little Blue, all the stuff that I showed in Little Blue, and you can live in the van or car in an emergency or just take it camping. But if you're like most people who, don't really want to live in a car or van, it's just nice to have it ready to go. Or a truck, get a truck with a topper on it. You can set all this up ready to roll so that if the grid ever shut down, if the grid ever went down, you're not. Now, you won't be able to run your air conditioner like normal. You won't be able to, run the washing machine and stuff like normal. But you have the ability to generate electricity to light up your house. You have the ability to generate electricity during the daytime to cook food, and watch TV and stuff and run the fans. At night, I would be weary of watching TV all night. You might have to test it to see how much power it'll actually run, I would use it for critical stuff at night, like lights, as needed at night, and fans, so that you're not hot, The other thing you might be able to run on it, especially during the daytime, is, they sell those cheap little 12-volt coolers, like I use in Little Blue. It's not a full-blown, expensive refrigerator. It's a small little, it runs off car, they're designed for cars and stuff. They're not the most efficient, but I can tell you how to make them more efficient, maybe in a future video. But basically, you get a 12-volt battery operated cooler. But refrigeration is electricity intensive. I'm going to give you a heads up on that. But if you get a little system like that, and you run it during the daytime, and you could make little things that you can keep cool, like meat and stuff like that, meat and veggies. So, but if you have it plugged into your off-grid system and you have it just setting aside and you learn to keep food and stuff in there, and if you live off that, you could actually turn off or unplug the big refrigerator if you learn to live off that little box. But if you live in a house or an apartment or a condo like this building here, you're not going to want to do that. Okay, you're going to want to run the gridded system. But if you have a vehicle, you can still use it in an emergency. Although this city would probably have a problem with you running, extension cord, unless you're on the first floor. But just some food for thought on living off grid. We kind of dealt with electricity, but then you got water. I think the essentials that you have to have for being self-sufficient, not so much off grid, but self-sufficient, is the ability to have water and electricity. And a way to somewhat have that in a city, if you're in a city environment, which they teach us in Florida, they tell everybody, but you don't even have to do this usually until there's an emergency, because we usually get a warning, in Florida for our emergencies, which are hurricanes. But basically your bathtub will hold what? Maybe 40, 50 gallons of water or more. So when you know there's a hurricane coming up, you can put water in there from your tap. Just keep your bathtub clean. But you could put water in there from your tap and use it. And if you feel like it's dirty, and you don't want to spend a lot of money buying a filtration system, get one of those portable. Get one of those portable pitchers. You know what I'm talking about? The water pitcher. So you can put water in that pitcher and it'll filter it for you. So you only filter the water you're going to drink. The other water you can use for, cleaning. So all the stuff that you have in a house, like these houses here on grid, give you a huge advantage to those people who live out in the woods. You have access to gridded power, so you can run high draw devices without even thinking about it, like air conditioning, refrigerator, and you don't have to spend, the people who live off grid will spend more than $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 on a refrigerator. That is ridiculous. I'm not going to spend $3,000 on a refrigerator. No, thank you. Even on a gridded system, I cringe when I look at I had a high-end refrigerator at one time, but I cringe at the price of a refrigerator when it starts to go over like $200 or $300. So, if you want to live economically and stuff like that, you don't need the high-end stuff. Just live on grid, but only use the gridded power for stuff that's high draw, like your refrigerator, your air conditioner, your washer, dryer. Those are the things that make life in a modern society very, very nice. It's luxurious. You even have hot water on demand, in a city, on grid. People will spend hundreds of thousands of dollars setting up a system to heat water and to pump water and use it themselves in an off-grid house or RV or whatever. You have access to all that already. Why not take advantage of it? Now, one little trick that I think you can do and get away with, even though the city would frown upon this, cities, I think, measure your water usage by how much water flows out of your toilet and water drain system. They measure, no, they don't measure it like that. I got it backwards. They measure it by how much water flows through the city's pipe outside. So they hook the city water, which is like a pipe, to a meter, a water meter. And that tells them how much water flows into your house. Okay? That does not stop you from catching rainwater and using that rainwater to flush your toilet. Or if you set up your own pump system, a small little pump, you could pump water and take a shower in it. Are you getting my ideas here? So you could be living in a house on grid somewhere, and you have a little water catchment, and you're like, well, aren't they expensive? I would just use garbage cans, those giant 50-gallon garbage cans or whatever, or a water drum. But garbage cans don't stand out. They look normal in a backyard. So you can use 2 of them and have 100 gallons of water on standby. And hook a little hose up to it and a little pump. And you have your own little water system that you can use to wash dishes, shower, you know. You could cook with it if you really wanted to. You could filter things if you want to filter it. But you're catching rainwater. You catch it off the roof. You got a huge rainwater catchment system off your roof already. So you have all these conveniences and systems already built into a house that's gridded for living off it. And you continue to pay the city so they don't mess with you. Don't turn your water off. If you turn off the water from the city, that's when they will come and give you a hard time. So you do have to pay kind of an extortion fee. You have to pay them to have the water connected, but you don't really pay for much usage. You only use a little bit. Like you might use it for the washer dryer. You know, when you're washing clothes, you might use it for the kitchen. You know, if you decide, well, I don't want to fetch a pail of water from the back or run the pipe or a hose or whatever up front and do that myself. So you use the city water when you want to. You can even shower with the city water if that's what you want to do. But I'm going to be honest, showering is one of the biggest wastes of water. Showering and flushing the toilet. If I were setting up a limited water supply system and I was catching my own water, that's where I would put the water. I would run the water up to the bathroom and use the water to take a shower and use the water to flush the toilet. So you're like, so what am I saying, Denoy? I'm saying that if you take water catchment, let's say you have 100 gallons, which you use in 2 giant trash barrels, okay, or whatever big barrels you have that can hold water and keep it clean, okay, you can pump that water to the bathroom and use it to flush your toilet. And you can also use it to take a shower in, you know, to wash your face if you want to, or you can use the city water. You can have a hybrid system using both, you know, but you save so much water. I think Timothy says you can't collect water in California. You can't collect water and let them know you're collecting water. Timothy, you're trying to travel the country and living in a van. I don't know if you intend on stealth camping or if you're just planning to go to all the military bases and camping on there legally. But if you're planning on camping in any city, it's not illegal, as Officer Rodriguez said, but the cities pass ordinances that it's not allowed. See, you'll get into trouble. They'll try to kick you out. They'll try to fine you or kick you out or confiscate your vehicle or something. So, you know, if you've been watching this channel, then you know a lot of what I'm doing is not really, it's like a gray line. You know, it's not like I'm breaking the law, but I am breaking their rules. They want me to pay for electricity. I make my own. They want me to, you know, pay money to them. I do pay for sales tax, gas tax, and everything else. You know, and I pay for my employment tax. So I do pay. I just don't pay as much as other people who live on grid and do all that. Although I'm paying it now, you know, because I'm at the RV park and the city makes them pay the taxes, which means they make me pay the taxes. So, let's get back here. You can see my handsome mug here, but basically just some ideas. For those of you who live on grid, but you get intrigued by the whole idea of living off grid, you can do it while you're on grid. If I was living in a city that said no water catch, you know, you can't catch water, I'd take it from my roof and I have water come down and it goes into a trash barrel, but they don't see it. I hide it, you know. I wouldn't, it's pretty sad when you have to stealth catch rainwater. Now, Florida is kind of interesting because I think they were promoting catching rainwater. The city was. Melbourne was, at least, or Brevard County. There was some years where there was actually a water shortage. Okay? And even now, we get so much water here. It rains all the time. Catching rainwater in Florida is kind of crazy because you wouldn't really need to catch, you wouldn't need too much of a catchment system for storage. A system will do because it refills really fast. It rains so much here. You saw my van get stuck the other day because of the rain. It gets so muddy, it's like swamp. They built this whole area on swamps, on top of swamps. So that's how rainy it was around here. It is. So, if I was even let's say I'm in an apartment somewhere, I'm in an apartment and I'm upstairs, okay, in an apartment, and I want to save some water bill because I think in an apartment, if you're in an apartment, unless they meter your apartment, which I think they do in an apartment, and you don't really have much room, but if you have a window or a balcony, you set up like water catchment there using like what do they call those things? Planters. You know how you hang a planter underneath a window or on a balcony? So the planters are designed to catch water and filter it down to containers. Then you have water to use. So you can save money that way. Like in a really, honestly, a really simple system would be, you don't even have to do complex wiring. I mean, not wiring, but piping and stuff like that. You can just catch the water into a little container, like a bucket or something, and get a little cup or whatever, or a bowl, and then take the water as you need to use it. You should know that, Tim. You're from Vietnam. In Thailand, we used to catch water with rain barrels. We just had little big, huge barrels, oil barrels or whatever, any kind of barrel we could get, and set it out there and catch the rain. And you didn't run pipes and hoses and stuff because people were too poor there. You'd have to buy those kind of things. So what you did is you just got a bowl or a cup, and you scoop the water out of your container, and then you shower right there. You wet yourself down with the water. We don't even use soap. Soap you have to buy, okay? Unless you know how to make your own soap. So you'd have to buy soap. In Thailand, we use these stones, smooth stones, river stones that you rub your body, and it removes the dead skin. So you come out clean. So, but the thing about it is, if you learn to live simply by not relying so much on society, you could be semi off-grid while you're living on the grid, and you could save a lot of money. I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but I know that I could probably cut more than half the expenditure that I would spend. I could probably get it down reasonably for me, and even for my family, if I taught them, between 1/3 to 1/2 of the expenses. I mean, I could probably save, with the whole family, it might be a little bit harder with the kids and everything else, but if everybody got trained, we could save probably half the money. Imagine your bills getting cut in half. And when I talk about bills, I'm talking about water and electric, okay? And then if you learn how to stretch food out, the budget, that could probably be cut for most people in half. So imagine all your bills that you pay right now, other than rent or mortgage, being cut in half. And then suddenly, you're like, wow, that's quite a huge, it depends on how much you're already saving. But a lot of people I know could cut their bills in half, easily. And if you were mortgaging your house, okay, you could pay off that house earlier with those savings. So your 20 or 30 year mortgage, you might be able to pay it off in 10 years. Think about it. So 10 years of suffering, if you want to call it that, but really, you're not suffering. You still have air conditioning. You still have all the modern conveniences. You have air conditioning. You have a microwave. You have a hot shower. The only thing you're doing is you're catching rainwater and you're using rainwater. You still have your TV, you have your internet, you have all that. The only thing is you're not paying the electrical bill to run those things except for at night. You know, during the daytime, God is giving you all that for free. Well, other than your $500 investment in your power system. And that system, I don't know how long it lasts, but I'm going to say it'll probably last at least 2 to 5 or 10 years. You know? So that's a way to save money without really changing your lifestyle. It's not as convenient as just flipping things on and having it work, but you still have that convenience if you're lazy. You can do that. But if you want to save money because you want to pay off your house, you know, or you're living in an area where the rent's higher than you can afford when you have all the bills like water and electric and stuff, cutting down the bills might help. But really, you know, I think housing, what they really need for this nation, the United States, is affordable housing. That's what it really comes down to. Affordable housing and affordable cost of living. The people's salaries and wages haven't kept up with the cost of living. It's ridiculous that if you want to stay in a hotel room, you know, a decent hotel room, it could cost more than you earn in a whole day. So if you're like the average American who doesn't have like a high paying job, but like a minimum wage type job or just slightly over minimum wage, if a hotel room costs you $120 to $150 for one night, that's more than you make in one whole day. That's ridiculous. But that's the status of the country right now. You know, you have to find a cheap motel or hotel, but even then it's like $60. So it's expensive, and we're seeing some of the results right now. There's going to be all these homeless people. I'm trying to help here by showing you how you can conserve and stretch your money out. You know, so just some food for thought, some ideas, and I hope that you guys found this video helpful. I hope you guys read the comments. YouTube's not saving the live chat comments anymore for some reason. So, you know, if you have a really good idea, come back to the video after, you know, I finish broadcasting and post your idea on there on additional ways people can save money. But I'm trying to show you that living off-grid doesn't really mean you have to be in the middle of the woods, out in the middle of nowhere, or in a swamp somewhere. You could actually be in a city and stealth off-grid. We're going to start a new term, because some cities hate that. You know, you can do it the ways I'm telling you, most of it, you can do it in a stealth manner. And even if your house has, if you live in one of those stupid places with, what do we call that again? The homeowners association or whatever. You live in one of those places that have rules on what you can do with your building. You could rig the stuff in your van or your car and then just run an extension cord. Just trying to show you how to beat the system or game the system, unless they have rules about your car not having solar panels on it. You know? But for the most part, this van looks normal. They might have a rule against this van, though. It looks like crap. They're like, you gotta have a van that's no older than 2 years. You know, they have stupid rules like that. But there's always a workaround. So until next time, everyone, take care. God bless you all. Put on caps. And if you have some good ideas that you think others would benefit from, you know, with regards to this whole subject that we're talking about, post it in the comments, not on the live chat, but in the comments on the video. We'll come back to it after it's processed. And share your ideas with other people, because you could be saving somebody. So take care. God bless you all. Please stay safe. Bye-bye now.